So I thought I would come on real quick. I always say that. I always say real quick. I don't know why on this channel I ever say these words real quick. But I thought I'd come on real quick and show you how I've been making meditation strands, necklaces. They're not beads because they are knots, and you can find how to do this really easily. This is nothing new. There's nothing that's, you know, crazy that I've discovered that I'm showing. It's something I'm enjoying doing, and so I thought I would pass it on. But if you look under making knotted rosary beads, you can find how to do this probably better than you'll have here. So I will try to link to some of those. But making rosaries with knots is something that is very, very popular and something that's been done for a long time. And so you can find a lot of information out about how to do it. I actually really like to work with meditation strands. I have a set of malas that I've made years and years and years ago that I've used for years for Buddhist meditation. I have specific ones for doing loving kindness meditation. I have a small one, wrist one, that I use for a specific type of meditation. So I'm actually a fan of having something to follow along as you kind of focus your breathing in, and it allows you to sort of kind of keep track and keep focused on the knot versus your brain going all over the place. I'm a big fan of them. I've used them for a long time. I have a video about kind of how I meditate with these types of things, so I will put a link to that in the description box below. But I'm also a big fan of just energetically having something like this with you whilst you're setting intentions or doing workings and things of that nature, because it just starts to absorb a lot of energy, and they're really fantastic. I also do like to work with knot magic. There is a great book. This isn't a video about that, but there's a great little book, an older book that I found on it. I think you can get online. If you can, I will put a link to that as well. And so, of course, as you are making these, you can set all kinds of intentions into the knots, which is also fantastic. So it's just, there's a lot of multifunctional usage. So this was the first one that I made, and I really enjoyed it. It's very relaxing and meditative to actually make, so I'm sure I'm going to end up with a billion of them because they're just, I like to make them. So this was the first one I did, and it's got obviously a kind of a trifecta, triad Celtic knotwork there, which speaks to me very clearly. I like this cord. This is a cotton cord that is actually probably my favorite to use, but it's difficult. I have three kind of craft shops around me, and this cord I can only find in one and only in black, and it's very often out. I grabbed the last two, and so it's not as easy for me to find this weight in this cord, which I really love. So when I was researching because it's best to research knotted rosary. There was a company that did hand dyed, variegated dyed, just the right size. I think this is 2 millimeter for doing knotted rosaries, and so it was $10 for 10. I think they're 30 feet long. They have to. I think they suggest having 30 feet. I have quite a bit left over at 30 feet, but they're already pre-cut into 30 feet strands, and you get 10 of them from a die batch. So you can see I just went through and split these out, though. This was called like Forest Moss. I'll put a link to this one because I think it's absolutely beautiful. So this is the one that I made myself that has some greens and some pinks, mossy greens and pinks in it with this. So this is my own personal, I mean this is too, but this is my heart. So I've put a lot of work into this, a lot of intention into it. It's sat with a lot of crystals and salts and oils and things. So this I absolutely love. I do really like how this knots up. So this is so far in terms of my favorite to actually create the knots from, and they are, as you'll see, a little larger than the knots in the black, and they stand out a little bit more bead-like because of that. So, so I had, and it was $10, and like I said, you got 10, in order to make 10 of these you can make. But you'll see that when it gets split apart, because it is variegated, you know, it comes from obviously a large skein of variegated, you actually get quite a variety of color. So this was one color palette. You have some more that's a little bit similar, but more on the browns and pinks, which is really lovely. This one is almost entirely blues and blacks, which I think would make an amazing sort of celestial one. This one has mostly blues and pinks. There, and this is all from one skein. This is golds and greens, which is very foresty. I will definitely be using that. This kind of color tone is what I was going for. That looks really fall oriented, so I can see this with like some leaf charm or something. This is more gold, pure gold and pure orange. We also have sort of like a blues and browns, which I really like the look of this one. And then I think this is the one I'm going to make next, which has got mossy greens and blues. It kind of feels like moss and shadows. So I think that's the one I'm going to make to show you how we're doing it. But I just wanted to show you this. Obviously you don't need all of these, but it was $10 and it got me all of these different color ranges out of one variegation. So I thought that was pretty cool. And I thought before I picked them all up, because I just separated them all out, that I would show you the different colors. And then, like I said, I will send, or I will put a link below to where I got. They have all different color variations. And I got them pretty quickly, and I think it was in the, of course this is US, but in the US I think the shipping was like $3. So I thought it was, I really like this. I just want to find a special kind of stars. Maybe I'll get a Libra sign for it or something like that. I don't know. I'm looking for something that to put specifically on that, and we'll see. So I'm just going to put those away. So let me just show. So I'm going to start with this. So why I'm making another one? Again, like I said, I have now the ability to make a few of them, so why not? And I enjoy it. I got this, I believe, at Michael's. And so what this is this came on a chain, but I got it for 50% off. So I think I paid $5 for this. And it opens up, and there are little pads in here. And I have some replacements. You can buy replacement pads for these. And they go in here, and you can put essential oils, drop some essential oil on here, and you wear them around your neck so that you can be able to smell the different smells. So this excites me because I use essential oils a lot, both in medicinally, but I also use them a lot for intention setting and these kinds of things. And so you can change this out. So I use specific for, let's say, the wheels of the year. I use specific essential oil and herb combinations that I could actually put these on here and have that sort of part of the smell of everything that I'm doing. So I wanted to make one up with this as the centerpiece. I probably will put a ring on it. I don't know. It should be able to fit in there. It's kind of a smaller hole, and this is thicker thread, so I may have to. I have some plain rings that I can put on there if I need to. So what you want to do, so this is how, I'm just going to show you quickly how to do it, and then I'll show you the finished product once I get it done. Of course, I should not have opened it so willy-nilly because now I'm just going to be knotted up. But this comes unknotted really easily. I quite like this. Okay, so I just find the ends and then kind of keep pulling it through because you want to find the middle. Now, there's all kinds of, I'm not going to go into all of the reasons why you might do particular number of dots. Obviously, if you're making a rosary, there are specific numbers that you put in because of the doing the rosary correctly. The, you know, how many Our Fathers and how many Hail Marys and these kinds of things. So there are, if you're doing a mala based on a Buddhist practice, you may, I have one with specific numbers for that one. So what you're doing may decide how many knots you choose to make. Mine has specific numbers here for a couple of the different reasons. One is that it has 1, 2, 3, 4 elements for earth. It has 4 larger knots around it that represent the 4 directions. Also the basic breakdown of the 4 seasons. It has 8 in between, which represent the 8 cycles of the moon, as well as the 8 wheels of the wheel of the year. I can also do loving kindness meditation with the number 8. And so this works really well for me. And so I have specific numbers of knots because of how I use mine versus somebody else. So I'm not saying how many I'm using will be the same for you. So let me zoom in here. I don't know how well. I've never tried to do something like this, so I'm not sure how well this is going to do. So we'll see. I will send you links to other ones that have, you know, maybe a better example of this. So you find your middle point, and I'm going to start with a larger knot. So if you look, see if I can find it, because they're not always super obvious, because I should probably try a 5 knot, but I don't like how they look. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then we have a larger knot that has, if you can see, there are 1, 2, 3, 4 loops versus 1, 2, 3 little legs, so to speak. And so this is in a rosary terms, this is an Our Father, although some people do 5, and this is would be a Hail Mary, I suppose. I was a comfortable Catholic, but I wasn't a good Catholic, and I was never old enough to actually do them. So I'm going to start with the larger knot, which what I do is you kind of, again, you're starting in the middle, so you've got, you know, string going on either side, and you just kind of hold it here and stretch it across your finger. Now some people put it like straight across, but I find it just falls off, so I just kind of do it like this, and you wrap so that it makes a crisscross. And don't, you know, you're not trying to like cut off your circulation, but you're going to wrap it so it makes that so that it makes the X across, and you're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4 for the first knot. And then this is where you want to be a little bit careful and don't make it so tight, I suppose. And you slide it off. So that 4th loop, though, that was back there, you're going to stick through the knot and pull it out. And now, of course, at first, when you've not made a lot of knots, you're going to be pulling quite a lot of string. Now, it gets a little bit tricky, and I will say that the only way to do this, to get better at it, is to just do it. You're gonna just kind of work, and I will also say this, when I make these, I am not looking for perfection, right? So what I am looking for is to create intentions into each of my knots. And so what I wasn't even on the screen. I'm going to do some more. I'm so sorry. I got to look at the thing. My intention is not to create perfection. My intention is to put intention into this knot. And so I do not worry if it comes out perfect. I don't make these to be perfect. I make these to have good intentions and good energy into every knot. So once you have the knot, you really want to make sure that you tighten it as good as you can, because it will start to loosen up if not. So I make it really tight and solid, and there's my first knot. Now obviously that's the easiest of the knots, because, let me see if I can zoom so I don't have to hold my hands weird. Okay. That's the easiest of knot because you're not trying to space it. And that's another thing that I learned. These are actually spaced out further than you'll see a rosary knot, but this is a spacing that I personally like because it ends up with something that hangs around my neck and down in a nice comfortable way, and I just simply like the spacing because I kind of rest my fingers in between there and then go to the next in between space in some ways, even though I'm really going through the knots. So I like that spacing for me. You may want to try to get it closer. That's going to be up to you. But even that spacing, if you were to go through all of mine, they're not going to be perfectly spaced. And this is not something that I worried about it at first. But again, my intention is I'm not a machine. I don't make perfection in things. And when I'm trying to make perfect knots and perfect spaces, I'm not putting the right intention and energy into the knots. I'm worrying about being perfect. So for me, it's not an issue. If that's an issue for you, I'm sure can work at it and get it really well. So the way that I then space it is I kind of start with the knot near the bottom of my finger here, and I go ahead. Now I'm going to do the smaller knots, which are just 3 loops. So 1, 2, 3. And again, you kind of pull it off and stick it in there and pull it out. And again, it's got quite a bit of yarn when you're just starting out. Now, this is where it gets a little bit tricky, as I said, because this first loop is what allows the knot to move, and this loop is what allows it to lock. So you kind of have to grab them like butterflies and kind of ease it to where, and just kind of, I just keep rolling things around and around and around until it starts to, and there's just no, it was really awkward and I couldn't, get a good grip on it. You have to do it. It's just one of those things you've got to practice, because it's going to shift as you start to tighten it. So you can see it's a little shorter because I'm going to be pulling this, pulling that, and kind of really getting my tightness in there, because you don't want to all of a sudden have it change length when you're done. So don't skip on the tightening section, and you want to keep kind of pulling this way and then pulling that way, and then pulling them together. So there is my first 4 loop and then the first of the 3 loops. Now again, you could do a 5 loop here. I just didn't personally like the way it ended up making a big mess for me, and I just didn't like it as much. So some Our Father knots, which is not what they're called, barrel knots, but some will do a 5 loop for the Our Father, and some will do a 4, and then 3 for the regular, I guess these would be Hail Marys, but these are called barrel knots. Just a lot of the videos are for making rosaries, so I got used to them as the Our Father and the Hail Mary knots. So yeah, so then I'm just going to continue, because I'm going to make 8 more knots of the 3 loops to make a section for, again, 8 spokes of the wheel for me, 8 cycles of the moon, and it also allows me to do how I do my loving kindness meditation. And so I'm just kind of stationing that loop there. That just, to me, gets, again, you'll see it moves quite a bit, but at least it seems to set me up well for getting it where I want it to be. So then you slide it through. And I would also say, don't be in a rush with this. Unless you're just making it for jewelry because you like the looks of it, then, do what you want to do. But if you're like me, or you making this for sort of meditation and intention work, then the process that's part of it, right? You're setting intentions into every one of your knots, and you don't really, it's not a race to the finish line. It's spending time with each one of those knots as you go, and setting in good intention. If you're making this for somebody, thinking about the person that you're making it for, setting intention for health and well-being. You might even do loving kindness for each. May they be well. May they're, just kind of go through each of the loving kindness meditations, which are, again, we'll put a link to how I do that below. And you can always adjust things so that it equals out to the 8 lines. So I personally would not be in a rush with these, because it's not a race. It's an actual meditation in and of itself to make these. And again, if you're doing it intentionally, if you're making it for a necklace, then, you know, go, you know, race to the finish line, I suppose. But, so you'll see, I'm just going to do a few of these just so you can not think about them. So then maybe it kind of how I wiggle it. Because that was the thing, is like, again, if you watch the rosaries ones, they end up putting these these knots much closer to each other than I do. And I had a hard time with that. And then I found the spacing that I wanted. And then it was like, oh, you know, it just came down to having to do it. You know, I couldn't, you can watch all the videos you want, but you're just gonna have to take a piece of string and mess around with it and practice it and just make them. And I'm sure that my first one was a lot less consistent than my second one, just because I started to get into a rhythm with it. And so you just continue your way forward, making all your knots. So I'm gonna go ahead and whoops. And yeah, if you feel like if something feels wonky, just undo it. And you can, now let's say you put it in and it just ends up in a really wrong place, and you can untie them. Obviously you want to figure that out before you go to really tightening them down hard, because what I find is if you keep spinning the loops, it gives you that ability to kind of place them where you want them. Also, sometimes they don't look as pretty. Like sometimes you end up with a knot that looks wonky. That's not something, like this one is kind of going to be that. Well, on one side it looks okay. This is what I stopped worrying about, because again, I'm setting intentions and I'm not looking for perfection. I had to just let that go because it was interrupting my flow of intention setting. Like technically that one's a little bit tighter, right? A little bit smaller of a spacing. Of course, if I went to a different one, it'd probably be perfect spacing. So that's not something I worry about. If you're really a person in which that will bother, and it did bother me at first until I had to remind myself, what is your purpose here? Is your purpose perfection, or are you doing, you know, magic, or are you setting intentions, or are you setting goodwill for somebody that you're making it for, or for yourself? Like, are you setting certain things for yourself? Then what's important? Is it important that this knot not be perfect as this knot? Or is it that you've put some really wonderful intentions into that knot, and whether it looks perfect or not, that's there. And that's kind of was key for me. Because otherwise that I would say, oh, see, on one side it's not too bad, but that side it's not so perfect. This is not a perfect knot. And I have become okay with that. So yeah. So I just wanted to show this to you. I'm going to go ahead and end this. Obviously this is going to take me a while to do, so I am not going to do the whole thing on here. But what I will do is once I get to where I'm going to connect or switch side, you know, in important phases I will come back and video it. For example, when I am going to start going the other direction. So I'm going to do half of it on this half because I've started at the middle, and then I'm going to do half of it on the other side. And then the other important part, yeah, this is definitely even harder to do when I'm trying to talk and stay in the camera, because apparently I'm not very good at that. The other thing is that I really whopper jawed that one. But what I was going to say is that if, you know, you really bungle a knot up and you're like, this isn't setting at all in the right place that I want it to be, you know, you can, before you tighten it down hard, you can untangle it and unknot it and redo it. Just once you've done what you know, like this, where you've really tightened them, it gets very difficult to be able to do that. So make sure you shift it before. But I will come back also when we connect the two together, and then how to add these 4 dangles down here, and then how to put a charm onto it. So I will come back and because this is all one piece of yarn. There isn't any stopping, so I will kind of come at the different places and show you what I'm doing once that comes, and hopefully this will be of some interest to someone. Okay, I'm back rather quickly because I did want to, for the sake of showing all the steps. So I started with a four loop barrel, and then I did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of the 3 loops. And so I'm doing the larger barrel right in between the sets of 8. So because I've done one set of 8, and now I'm going to start my another set of 8 for the finish this side. First I'm going to put another 1, 2, 3, 4 loops. So I've got 4 loops, and I'm going to slide that through. Apparently there are rosary tools, as well as I think a fishing net repair tool that you can get to help you to make these probably more consistently in size and these types of things. But because again, my purpose here is not perfection, but oops, sorry, I know I keep going off of the thing. And I will again link videos that probably are made by professionals showing you how to do barrel knots. But because that's not my intention, and my intention is to place intention into knots, I really do want my fingers to be on it and using my hands. So I almost have got them. Again, it was that, okay, Kelly, wait, what are you trying to accomplish here? So there is a 4. So now I have 2 4 loops with 8 loops in between. So now I'm going to do another set of 8 3 loops, and then I'm going to switch over to the other side and go in the other direction. Okay, I am back. So you can see where I started with the 4 knot, and then I did 8, and then another 4 knot, and then another 8. So I've done that. Oops, let me get the right way. I've done that with my new set. I've done a 4 barrel knot, and then I did 8 3 barrel knots. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Then I did a 4 knot. Then I did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Again, the number is totally going to depend on what you want to do, but this is what I do. So now I'm going to go back to the beginning, to the middle. So I've got that 4 there in the middle, and I am going to start now with the going down the other side. And I'm going to do 8 3 barrel knots, 1 more 4, and then another 8. So then I'll have my 2 sets of 8, or I'm sorry, 4 sets of 8, and I will have 3 of my larger knots, because this right here is going to make the 4th one. So all you're going to do is turn around and go in the other direction. 1, 2, 3. I'm just going to do 1, and then I'll come back after I'm done with all the rest of them. But I told you I would show you all the way, all the different steps. So what I'm doing is just putting in another of the 3 strand knots. There. Again, tighten every knot really tight. Okay, so I'm just going to keep going. I'm going to do 8, and then another 4 wrap, and then another 8, and then the next time I come back, I'm going to show you how to join the 2 ends together, and then make these last little 4, and then how to connect on the little piece. So I shall be back. Okay, so we are coming down the path here. So we've done all of this, and what we have to do now is connect these strands together right here. And we're going to make the 4th, what if you look it up online, is called the Our Father knot if you're making rosaries. If you're otherwise, it's a 4 wrap barrel, because we have 4. Oh, ignore her. You don't know the drill. It's about, come here. Come on. Heaven forbid somebody would walk up to their own apartment without her having something to say about it. So we started here in the middle, and we worked our way down the side, and there's 8, then another 8, and then we worked down this side, did 8, another of our fathers, and then another 8, right? So now we have to connect these together with the 4th of the 4 wrap barrels. But we've got 2 strands now. Let me zoom it in. Okay. So we're going to do just the same thing that we did before, but we're just going to wrap twice, because if you look, that actually makes 4 strands around my fingers. So we're going to go ahead, do what we did. Oops, go behind it, but this time make sure you're pulling both strands through. So it's a little tricky there. Just make sure you get both, and you're going to pull both through, which I probably wasn't even on the camera because I lose track of it. So you're just doing the same thing you did before. It's just you're taking those strands and bringing them together. Okay. So you're going to go ahead. It's going to be it's a clunkier knot. Even if you don't do it perfect, it's a even if you do it perfect, I should say, it's a clunkier knot. But again, don't worry about it. If your point here is to make something that is meditative, and don't be worrying about perfection. So again, make it really tight. You want to pull on both sides because you don't want that loosening up later. So essentially that is your ring, right? So here we've got a ring. We haven't cut anything. It's just stayed a ring. We've got 4 of the larger knots, and then we have 4 sets of 8 of the smaller knots. So then if you look at this one that's finished, right? So we've connected right here. I've put in 4 smaller knots leading to whatever you're going to hang at the end, because that represents the 4 elements. So, but where we have here, we actually have 2 strands, right? And we only actually need to have 1 strand. So if you're using this kind of rope that is sort of made for this, if you're using something that is nylon, if you're using I think it's most of the time it's got some type of nylon in it, when you trim it and then you can burn one end, it kind of melts it back. Now this one right here is made out of cotton, so that's not really going to melt back, and burning it's not really going to cause it to meld. So when you trim it, what I did with this one and the other ones that I've made with cotton is I've trimmed it, and then I put a bead of brain dead. I put a bead of super glue there to sort of solidify that. Even though it's really tight, I'm not sure that it would really go anywhere, but just to kind of make sure that that's sort of solidified, I've used a little bit of super glue. But I'll show you on this one, if you're using this kind of rope, it will melt itself back and kind of meld it. So let me grab a pair of scissors. Okay, so since I'm using variegated, I can kind of pick which one. I like that this is going quicker back to blue, so to bring a little bit more of that blue into the end. So this is the one that I'm going to cut off. So I am going to trim fairly close to the knot. This doesn't do very good. And then I'm going to take my lighter. Again, I don't want to catch that other one on fire. And you'll see that it kind of pulls back and melts a little. So obviously I don't want to catch the other. I just want to do this enough so that that is kind of nice. And and if you feel like it, I mean, you could go through and stick again a piece of super glue on there as well, but I find that they hold pretty well. So now we have connected things together, and all we have to do is lead up to this final knot here. So I first need to do 3 regular knots. So I'm going to treat this just like we've been treating it. 1, 2, 3. Oops, swirl it, swirl it, swirl it. Well, that's how I do it. Swirl it around until it's kind of in place. Again, I'm always making sure you tug, 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 tug. So there's 1, 1, 2, 3. So I'm going to do 1 more. 1, 1, 2, 3. Because the 4th knot is going to hold the charm or whatever you want to put on the end. Okay, so now I have my 3, and so now I'm going to connect it. Now what you choose to put on the end, now this is one that I did with a trifecta. You know, you can go to Michael's, you can go to Joann's, you can go to Hobby Lobby if you're in the United States. You can go obviously online. There are all kinds of things that you could put on there depending on, you know, feathers, whatever is kind of associated with maybe the intention of what you want to use it for. This would be really to do with a lot of balance. You might have a beautiful shell or something. I've got some shells. I'll probably do one like that that may be related to healing kind of work. It just depends on what you want to represent on the bottom. This one has the tree. It has the word knowledge on the back of it. This is just a primary one that I will be using. Whereas as this one, also tree motifs are really important to me. And this one is going to be more for actually working to be able to put, again, essential oil, aroma therapy, kind of magic-y things when I'm working with that kind of energy. And so this is going to go on here. Now, I can actually get this rope through here, so I'm not going to add anything on, but sometimes you may need a little package of rings just to expand the hole there, and you can get these little packs of rings for really cheap. So in order to do this, we want to connect this in. So we're going to do, I did a 3. Now, I think that they recommend doing a 4, but I wanted just to go into 1, 2, 3, 4, the last 4 of the 4 elements. And so I am going to go ahead and do three things just like we would normally be doing. So you're going to go through the knot the way that you would normally be, and this is where you kind of wish you had some extra hands. So you're going to go through the knot the way you normally do, and then you're going to put this, whatever it is you're going to use, on the end. I try to get it up kind of close to what's going on here, right? And then you're going to go back through the knot. This is before you're tightening your knot up. You're going to go back through the knot, and obviously if you need it to be front, it doesn't matter to me, because obviously whatever way I put the necklace, it doesn't matter. So now you're going to go ahead and tighten your knot, and this is just a little bit clunky, but if you kind of ignore the thread that you put back through, oops, if you kind of ignore that, I do keep kind of tightening it up but you're going to wait till you get this a little bit tighter. So I'm going to kind of keep doing my thing, tightening up that knot just like you would if you didn't have anything attached to it. And then as you start to get it tighter, keep pulling this up there nice and tight. So then I'm going to go back and tighten this a little bit more. It never, from what I understand, it's not going to get as tight as the other knots because you've got that other knot that can move, but it can get pretty tight. I get it real tight. Then I've tightened this up too so that it's nice and close to it. And I just keep trying to make sure I've got that knot as tight as I can and then pull that through. So now I have my tree attached to it. And the final step is to do the same thing we did before, which is to trim off, trim this off. Okay, trim that. And then melt it again or burn it. And again, if you want to put some, see how that kind of melt, you can't probably tell, but it kind of melts down into it, which is nice. And then of course it hardens up as it cools. So now you can see that I have, let's see if they came out even close to the same length. Actually, this one came a little bit shorter, so I must have put a little bit smaller spaces between, but not by much. They're nice length because they can go over your head and just hang down, which is really nice depending on what it is you're doing. If you want to keep them or keep them nearby, hanging on your neck, then they are really nice for just wrapping and holding as well. So this one, as you can see, opens up as we talked about, and it has a little pad of felt in there, and you can buy refills. I have a whole pack of them. And so if you take a couple of whatever you're using, depending on what you're doing, I use a lot of peppermint health-wise, but if you're doing other intention settings and you have specific scents you're using, then this is great. So I'm just going to put a drop of peppermint, and because obviously it's open on the top, you can't smell it, but I can smell it. So now I have the scent of whatever it is that I'm working with right there. So this will be fantastic, and it can be traded out. Just put a different piece of felt in there with different scents in there. If you're sick and you have sinus issues, use peppermint is amazing. So just hang it around your neck, and it's amazing. So there you go. This is just, again, there's all kinds of videos out there. If you search for making knotted rosaries, there are all kinds of instructional videos. I will link to the couple that I actually used to try to figure out the knots, so that you can find those. I'll also put a link to where this wonderful, they have all different colors, but you'll see with just one $10 purchase, you get 10 different ones of a lot of different colors. If you look back to the beginning of the video, how many different color ways you're able to make out of those, which is really lovely. And so the rope for this technically cost me about $1 because I bought the $10 pack. And then this I found, I think it was originally 10, and I had a coupon. I always buy things with a coupon. So you can, and then obviously your time. It does take time, especially if you're sitting and you're doing it in an intentional way. It's definitely going to take you some time to do all the knots, especially depending on how many you do and kind of what you're doing over the top of them. If you're doing loving kindness meditations, what intentions you're setting into every single knot. It can certainly take a good chunk of time to do that, but for a little cost you can make various things that you can use for different purposes. So I hope that you found this of some interest, and I am greatly, like I said, just the act of doing them is quite meditative, and so I enjoy working with them. I've worked with some type of mala or meditation bead work for many years, but I've never, I did one that I had beads and knots. I have a smaller one that I did knots and beads on it, but I've never done one like these, and I'm really enjoying it. So I thought I'd show you. So I hope you enjoyed this, and if you make one, please, and put it up on Instagram or something, please tag me, because I would love to be able to see what you come up with. So have a great day.